Are you a leader in customer success, pre-sales, professional services, support? Do you work behind the scenes and roll up your sleeves to make sure that customers are happy? Renew. Then this is for you. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Getting it done. Services, success, and software. We'll talk with the pros that have been in the trenches, getting service teams off the ground, launching new types of groups to service customers, or running agencies that don't have a product attached to it. For the pros, by the pros. This is the GSD Podcast, and this is your host, Jeff Kushmerek.
We'll start in 1 second, but I'm an ugly American and I'm terrible with name pronunciations, which is
Marija Skobe-Pilley.
So Marija Skobe-Pilley. Oh, no, I got this. Marija Skobe-Pilley. We'll get going here. So Marija, thanks for joining. So I first met you. Actually, this is interesting. Your podcast showed up in my podcast player as you might want to go listen to this, and I did.
Did you?
Right? I did, and I posted about it like that day on LinkedIn because it was an awesome podcast. It was the one with the Winning by Design.
Julie.
Yeah.
With Julie Persovsky. Yeah.
Yeah, just a great podcast. And I said it then, and I'll say it again. Like, guys, like, you don't have to be female to go listen to this podcast. It's crazy. So, so then you got, I'm subscribed. So, and you're cranking those out. Like, how many podcasts are you on a weekly basis right now?
Yeah. I'm currently weekly, and I'm on episode, I believe, 78.
Oh my God, that's good. Funny note, I got my daughter to go and renumber all the stuff, but then she missed out on like 20 of them. I have no idea. I actually have no idea. I think I stopped with the episode titles. I've hired people on Fiverr to go in and fix it. It's still messed up. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be able to say like, Marija, like I talked about that in episode 34. I've seen some podcast hosts do that. And I'm like, yeah, this is probably just for you. This is just a passion of, just doing it for fun, no advertising, no money. I'm not sending you any money, Marija, just for being on the podcast. So I apologize for that. So
No, that's...
Go ahead. Yeah. So sorry, I cut you off. But so let's talk about a quick CS background, right? Because this isn't the autobiographical, starting in 1999 podcast. There are ones that are like that, but this is 2 minutes on why we should talk to you, and then we're going to get into a topic that's hot on your things that you want to talk about.
So I was born in... but joke aside, I was trained as a classical musician, and all my life for first 20 something years was music and performing and concerts.
Amazing.
And then I went to do my master's, and that was in Cambridge. And in the whole research about arts and music in education, I discovered how businesses and kind of leadership development can benefit from those forms of arts. And that's something that I started researching a bit more. And then I realized, I have no business experience. How can I be influential in the field or know more about it? And little by little, I just started becoming much more interested in business. And I made a pivot to not stay in education anymore and in music, but to enter the world of business. And I started in a payroll company as a project administrator based on my previous skills. That was a good fit.
Yeah.
And not even a year after, I saw a job post for customer success manager. And when I read that, I just knew that was going to be my career. And 2 years after, I became a CSM in a company. Firstly, I became like implementation consultant and worked my way up to CSM. Never looked back, found my professional home. And yeah, now I am a director of customer success at ClickUp.
That's awesome. That's great. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what instrument you played, which we talked about. This is for the guests because we talked about this beforehand. So absolutely.
Yeah, actually, organ was my main instrument, like the big church or concert hall organ, and of course, piano.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of my daughters still plays piano. Do you ever like get on like a Hammond organ or anything like that? Do you go jam with some bands at all, or do you still go out and do any of the musical stuff?
I do. I do music over the weekends, also the band and like, worship and having organ or lots of or piano and singers. Yeah, not mostly Hammond organs, not that. No, it just still gives me joy. Like it's one of those things that once you know it, and you're just enjoying it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, are you going to Pulse this year? San Francisco?
No, not to San Francisco, but I may likely go to Amsterdam.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you should get a band for that or do something music. I don't know if you know, I'll probably cut this out of the podcast, but there's a bunch of us playing a concert at Pulse. It's I've
seen that.
Yeah, so
you and Miranda, right?
And Jay, and Brian Plaster from IntelliGauge as well. So it should be a blast. So it'll be great. So
sounds like a blast in the party.
Well, well, that's the thing. I made sure it was free drinks, so nobody will hear all the mistakes, right? So
good strategy.
That's great. So we wanted to. Thank you so much for the background, by the way. That was awesome. So we wanted to chat about a few things. One of them is this going from individual contributor to being a manager. And then you got super passionate about the march to CCO and things like that. So let's chat about that. So you started off as an individual contributor and you worked your way to manager. So you've got a sort of a very recent experience on this as well too. What are your thoughts about people who set that target to be the ultimate CCO?
I would say, well, good luck, good for you. Well, I'm joking.
Many years of pain. That's great. Yeah.
I mean, it's a very individual experience, right? If anybody asks me ever, what is your 5-year career plan? I would have never been able to give a proper answer. Even now, I entered my first role in customer success as a CSM was 4 years ago. And even then, I wouldn't have given any plan what is next. You're happy to roll out with the role and learn as much as you can. But I know there are some people who really have to think in terms of, I have a plan and this is where I'm going to. So if you are, no matter where in your career, and you want to be a CCO in 5 to 10 years, I think I have an approach how you could go about any plan that you have. And it's very simple and you can just do it even in the spreadsheet. Firstly, if this is your goal, you need to start at the top. And if you want to be CCO, go out there and find 10 different job posts for CCO. Yeah. Write down those skills. So start to firstly understand what are the skills and behaviors and aptitude that you need in order to perform that job well. Then when you are realizing what does it look like, then you need to start working on how do you break that gap for the skills. And then firstly, you have to be realistic. If you're an individual contributor now and you want to be CCO in 5 years' time, maybe very likely it's impossible. Secondly, you really need to know where you are in which organization. If you are in a big organization, you have to know the dynamics as well. In big organizations, your promotion path and progression might be slower than in a startup. So if you want to speed up your career, firstly, go into startups where you will wear loads of multiple hats, where you will be exposed to so many different types of the roles. And yes, it may be very likely that you can progress faster because you are in a different environment. So you need to
also, Maria, you age a lot faster too when you're in those.
I'm sure you do. So going back to the beginning, first strategy would be understand the skills needed.
Yeah.
And then, well, work backwards. If that is my ultimate goal, okay, there are a few other roles in between that I should be working towards. And then you figure out again, so what is the next role, right?
Yeah.
I'm here at the moment. Let's say I'm a director. So what is the next role that I can become in order to achieve that ultimate goal? Is that next role, just going higher? Would it be a VP or head somewhere? Or is it going a little bit further? If you're in customer success, do you need to have a bit more experience or exposure in other customer-facing role that you perhaps didn't have previously, right? Maybe services, maybe support, renewals, etc. So try to just figure out what is lacking from skills, from experience, from exposure, and then work towards that. So 5 years plan is a good thing, but firstly, be very much open for the opportunities, because in 5 years' time, firstly, the economy and the world can change so much. So if you're not open to other interesting opportunities, you may just miss out a lot. So I'm not saying having a 5-year career plan is bad, but maybe you can sense it's definitely not my way of doing things. I'm very spontaneous and saying yes to opportunities.
Yeah, no, I was the same way. I when somebody asked me my 5-year, I was like, I've got no idea. And like literally my answer is I want to get into this job that I'm hiring for, that I'm applying for, and do that with complete focus, not on what my next step's going to be. But let me ask you a question, because you used a term that in the States, if you bring up, I just picturing Rachel Provano, who's a good friend of mine. I don't know if you know her, but like if you say head of CS around her, she will kill. But I know in Europe it's a little different, right? So Europe, there's in US, and tell me if this exists over in Europe. Head of CS is this like cop-out way of giving somebody the leader title, but without giving them the VP role, which is like saying, oh, you're the head of CS, instead of saying, oh, we think this position is valuable enough that we're going to call you a vice president. So it's usually, for me, I see more in the director role, and then you progress to VP. How does it work over where you are?
That's a good question, because if you think of 10 different companies, you will see those titles being done in 10 different
everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. But even in the US, I do see, even in my company, some heads are the VP level, but their title is still head. I don't know who has the preference. In EMEA, it's interesting, because often you may have seen that there are departments who have head of CS, and that person can be the only person to start with, and then the person who's building the department. So in a way, it is same as team lead or manager or even director somewhere. So they're just different nomenclature, but essentially just depends how big is the team and whether you are like the first one building the team, or there are already few people and then you come to just manage the team. There's no rule yet, but very often in startups, it will be head of CS, and that covers it all. You just go on and do all the work possible. Well,
there's also there's a connotation that you'll be a player coach, which is also a tough role. Look at it. I saw a screenshot that face, but exactly. Marija's thoughts on player coach. It's a tough role. I think it's a temporary role that a lot of companies have to have. Just chatting with a startup yesterday, they need somebody to come in, evaluate what's needed before they start, hiring and things like that. And sometimes you don't know, nobody's been in that role. You kind of have to do it, roll up your sleeves a little bit, but hopefully not longer than 6 months. You don't want to be a player coach for like 3 years. That's terrible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's terrible. And I mean, there's no much benefits for anyone there, right? Because you are so divided between two very different roles.
Yeah, I mean, how you're never able to give people the management sort of stuff that they need on a weekend basis. If you're chasing fires down, you're implementing customers, all that stuff. It's just, it's not worth. So when we were chatting beforehand, something really set you off a little bit. And I'm sure you hear this a lot, which is like, oh, my company has no career path.
Yeah, that is really interesting, because I hear that a lot. Oh, we don't have a career path. Like, what is our career path in the company? Yeah. So I just have a different opinion. Your company doesn't have a career path for customer success? Well, that's awesome. That means, firstly, you don't have already a prescribed path for you, which you should follow, because there is then typically lots of other opportunities. That means you can create your own path by yourself. Now, how does that work in practice? I think that whenever you are in a role and you're becoming confident and comfortable with the role, that's in a way a sign that you're maybe ready for something else, for some different challenges, either in terms of different role or different types of responsibilities. So what I always think about is, Simon Sinek, start with that. Why? Why are you in this role? What are your strengths that you are really developing even more in this role? What is it that you're really good at and that you really like? So start from yourself about your current role. Like, what do you like? What you don't like? Again, if you want to, have a title that may require responsibilities that you really, really don't like to, like, why to take that path? There are so many other options. So anyway, you're understanding your why, and then you're thinking based on your strengths and interest, what could be other similar roles or even, roles that will promote you to be more manager, more leader, whatever that looks like for you. But what I have realized, what is really important is to know just climbing up. And if you're an individual contributor, just thinking that a leadership role means people management and you need to go in that direction, it is not correct. Because now, especially, there are more and more roles that are in a way leadership roles, and it could be even higher leadership without loads of people responsibilities. Now, there are so many examples, like people who are very analytical or like to create processes. Very often CS ops is a good role for them. It is a strategic role. And when you start it out, very likely you don't have people management responsibilities unless you start building the team. But if that is your strength, just go for it. It doesn't mean you have to become manager and director and VP just to perform some of those activities.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also don't realize, I think the amount of, frustration or whatever, just everything dealing with people management. You're basically taking on almost like a parenting role, right? Yeah. And I remember going through the wise questions with somebody who wanted to move into management. And I was like, do you really want to manage people? Like, are you okay with people coming into your office and just like venting all of the time, and also you're finding out stuff about people that you might not have wanted, but also I remember the first time somebody on my team came into my office and she was like, I just want you to know I'm not sneaking around interviewing. I'm actually pregnant, but I'm not 3 months yet. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's like that, you're carrying a lot of that around, right? So it's and then just going through performance reviews, and when you've got a bad employee, like especially in the lead up to having to let that person go, that's a really tough. That's hard. That stuff it's hard to sleep when you've got that going on, especially like you're going to let this person go on a Friday and everything's leading up. I usually can't sleep at all. Those are my least favorite parts of the job. And some people aren't into that, right?
You really nailed it. I had those situations, and there are many sleepless nights, not only one. But you said something interesting, like there are so many components of people management that, are not so awesome that may look like from the outside. And it's really also important to understand, just because you are an amazing individual contributor, no matter what you do, that doesn't mean that naturally you should progress in people leadership roles, because they are entirely different types of roles with different skill set, different responsibilities. Like everything is different.
Just Marija, I'm super. So sorry, I could jump out. I'm passionate about that. You might, because you're such an amazing individual contributor, you might be a terrible manager, right? Like we saw this with developers for so long where they're like, you're the best developer, you manage people. And then suddenly they can't understand why these people are having issues. Like, it's super easy. Look, you just go do this. And a basketball example that I think I talked about on this podcast was when Michael Jordan became a coach. He was the worst because he's like dunking on guys like, why can't you just do this? And why, and it's super easy. It comes easy to me. They don't realize that. So, not everything comes easy to everybody. So.
Yeah, but also it's interesting to think it's really entirely different mindset and set of skills. Like you mentioned basketball. I can think of amazing musicians, amazing pianists who are amazing on the stage. Does it mean that they can actually coach somebody to become great musicians? Like entirely different world, and very likely not, just because
they're usually terrible.
Everything else that you do. Yeah.
I play guitar, and I've had some amazing guitar teachers that are like. Sometimes the ones that aren't the best players are the best teachers. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, they can be much closer to those people who still need to develop a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting to mention because very often, obviously, we promote based on the merit and based on performance, right? And if going from individual contributor to manager is the only path, it can very likely be a problem because what makes you amazing performer will not very likely not make you amazing manager. That's entirely different world.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give the example, even just recently, what happened in my team. We promoted a team member from CSM role into CS enablement role.
Okay.
And that's something that absolutely didn't exist.
Yep.
Like the whole idea about the role and the person transitioning. So the timeline was 2 months, like the role never existed, but we realized the skills that person has would be so amazing. And instead of, her being awesome CSM for her book of business, which is a great deal in itself, she could just help and support the whole global team in something else. So again, the role never existed. We started just having conversations, and then, you're building the case, you're creating some documentation and numbers, you're talking to heads of department, CRO, and basically everything happened within 2 months. And it is an example, like awesome example how you never know what can happen a few months down the lane. And okay, I'm talking from like startup scale up perspective. I know it's not a case in some big organizations, but just because the role doesn't exist today, it doesn't mean that you cannot create it in the coming months based on your own interests and skills. Like when you recognize there is a gap or there are a few gaps and you're finding solutions already, just go for it. Very likely, it may not even be a new role immediately, but you may start with projects and initiatives that turn into a separate role in a few months.
That's right. Exactly. And if you get too locked into like, I got to be a director, you might, I don't want to do that thing. It's not a director, but I know because I did something very similar a long time ago. And then a year later, people were like, I got promoted to director for doing all of those things. Perhaps also because I brought some Cuban cigars back to the States, but we're not going to talk about that. But it's funny because it's true. But exactly, if you get so locked into something that that's not on this career path that I've defined for myself, you're not going to come up with these things that might wind up being the conduit to you actually getting that promotion.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something like doing the work. Sorry. I think that's something that, people may think of promotion as, once I get promoted, I am going to do this, this, and that. It's not such a black and white line. Typically, when you want a promotion and when you're working for it, that working for it also means that you're getting involved in initiatives, in projects, in things that you see needs to be improved, needs to be done differently. Very often those projects are the ones that lead you to just get the title for the role that you're already assuming. Maybe you heard like some people say, at least you should be doing the role 6 months already before you get promoted.
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't think it's actually a rule, but it happens very often, right?
Yep.
No one will just promote you because, well, you've been good. Like there has to be that actual need and you doing the work already. And I think that's fair. And I think everybody should just start understanding when you see the gap, when you come with solutions that is going to be very valuable for the team, you will be valuable for it, even if it doesn't mean promotion immediately, but it can very likely mean in the coming months. But once you're having those conversations, you at least have the whole track record of activities and projects you've been involved to that will contribute to it.
And you're showing that you're taking the initiative to go, I've identified, somebody that says, I've identified a gap, we need to do X, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in order to get over that gap. I mean, that's something that when it's promotion time, or you're thinking about making new managerial roles or whatever, those are what factor into my mind. If somebody saw something, they took the initiative and they went after it and they're doing it versus like, I want a promotion. Like, it's, this is my, my God-given right or something like that. So.
That's the whole point. I see people asking, what could be next for me? And then you're thinking about their performance. Look, if you're not the top performer, no one ever will think about promoting you, just because there's never going to be so many promotions in a company's life cycle to have space for everybody just because you've been here for, XYZ months. It doesn't happen. You have to do the work and then you can earn it. Otherwise, it doesn't just happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about something like almost like 10 minutes ago, I think. And I took a note because I wanted to get in. I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong on this. I definitely just wanted to get your perspective. There's a couple schools of thought, when you get to that CCO level of whether you need to be an expert in all of those areas. And you mentioned support, which is always, let's not talk about the support should be in dev or support should be over here. But I don't necessarily feel that you need to have all of those, Marija shouldn't get the promotion because she's never worked in support and you need to manage support. I'm sort of like, well, I know how to manage people. I know how to provide air cover. We have a good director of support. I'll hire a good director in there. And I'll get up to speed on those things. How do you feel about those different functional areas? Because if we think about CCO, we've got implementation, hopefully these are all customer, post-sales things that are under the CCO. We've got the CS group, obviously, sometimes support. We've got training, we've got enablement, we've got some advocacy things going on. It's hard, unless you've been around for like 20 plus years, it's hard to pick up all of those skills and everything like that. So anyways, I just wanted to see what you thought about that.
Is there a saying that says like the great leaders hire people that are more capable from them?
Yeah.
And I strongly believe in that. Like no matter which role you're at, but especially if there is C-suite, you have to make sure that you can properly hire the best talent who can do the work. That's it, because all of those people are the ones that are actually going to do the work that you are accountable for. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, it's very likely you're not going to have your hands dirty in all of those departments. It's very unlikely. As long as you have some decent understanding of how they all function, how they are all connected together, what are the KPIs, you should be checking all of them. I think that's good enough to get you started. And okay, I'm not giving advice for CCO. It's not that I'm having experience in that area, but I think focusing on the right people and hiring the right leaders is going to be so much bigger factor in your success rather than getting your hands dirty in the details in the support department or implementation department.
Yeah, I can't remember. I've read half of Rod's book. I don't know if you've read it, but I can't remember if he covers this. I will ask him, but I'm sure I'm showing off that I haven't finished the book yet. But
I haven't finished it either yet.
It's good. I feel like it's one of those books that you don't sit down and read all in one setting, right? It's sort of like you just pick it up and you read a good chapter or two or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's great, and everything. So it's good. Rod, if you're listening, love the book. So
just have to read it.
Yeah, exactly. So listen, I think we covered off on that pretty well. I wanted to get people to know about your podcast. So let's talk about, what would you say, 78 episodes, which I feel like 78 might have been out this year. I'm just kidding, of course. Like, I just love how you're cranking them out. And so talk about your focus, because it is the Women CS podcast, right? So you're primarily or mostly or always interviewing women, which is fantastic. I'm all for it. But talk to everybody who, if they're listening here, maybe they've not been lucky enough to have found your podcast yet.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yes, it is like the first women-only podcast for customer success professionals. In every episode, I bring, some of the remarkable women in customer success to share their experiences, their stories, their challenges, really for the sake of inspiring other women and providing them with tools to succeed. Yeah. It's pretty simple. But why I started it and why is it all about women, really? A few years ago, I was on a Gainsight Pulse, and there was a presentation in which one slide was, the moment that the whole audience stood silent. And that was a graph that showed how the state of customer success when it comes to gender diversity. That graph showed how if 60% of women entered CSM role versus 40% men, moving up the ladder on managerial level, it was 50-50, which is kind of good for tech. It was, better than the average in tech. But then everything above managerial level was like 30% women versus 70% men.
It's terrible.
And that was really bad data.
Yeah.
And there were so many questions after that. And I was also thinking, why is it so much? Like, why can't women go from an individual contributor all the way up in the leadership? And from so many different reasons why that could happen. I also thought, maybe they don't even have proper role models, proper female role models that they can follow and learn from. And the idea just came, why wouldn't I create a podcast and just, showcasing different women so others can learn from them and they can have a platform to just express their stories, experiences, and everything else that can help other women. So,
I love it.
Yeah, that's been going on for a few years now. And kind of naturally, the whole community around it happened. And now most recently is the whole Women in Customer Success Power Up community, which is peer networking. Again, with the whole aim of supporting women in the field through networking, through mentoring, through just building skills. So yeah, it's a thriving world for sure.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I will say something. So I've got 3 daughters, so I absolutely love it. Just as I don't know if you've got this, there's a level of wokeness in certain areas where I'm not allowed to say, because I have 3 daughters, you should just say, I just think that's fantastic. But I do have 3 daughters and I love them. I love the initiative and things like that. So I think that's great. Those numbers just blow me away. And I will say every time I see a role open up, I'm always reaching out to somebody that's female. I just saw yesterday, I heard from somebody, there's a VP, global VP of CS at a certain place. I'll tell you after we stop recording. And I immediately knew of a few people that were looking for jobs and sent it over to a female, because it's exactly, we need more female leaders out there. In my company, I'm the only male. I've got 3 other females, because this interesting thing happened where it was just me and a couple people that I knew had kids, and they were I just knew them as top performers. And they reached out to me and said, I want to be able to come back to work, but not have to be full time. And I knew I'd get more out of them in 20 hours than I get out of most people in 40. And also it's I need to finish this presentation because I got to go pick up at 2:20 to get my kid. I will take that every day of the week. So.
Gosh, but that's so true. We are just aware of limited capacity that we have. When I started hiring, it was only me. I was the first one in EMEA. And then when I needed to build a team, suddenly I got 3 guys, and then it was, just them and me. And then at the moment we are 50-50 really when it comes to gender. But yeah, it's interesting. But you said a great thing. Like when you hear about a job post, you are almost immediately thinking about who can be the best, and if that happens to be women, why not?
Yeah.
But there's good lessons for leaders. Like how much are you even influencing the pipeline of great candidates to make sure that you have enough gender balance within your pipeline only? I think all the leaders in customer success could be more aware of it. And I know we are talking about the gender diversity now, but for me, it's also all about it's about the backgrounds as well. Like, do you want to have everybody in your team coming from similar type of background and companies, or you want some diversity in thoughts and in previous backgrounds and in age as well? I mean, that's very important, like diversity in maturity.
And on that note, think about that. I used to love having such a diverse team, just because I have a smaller team now, but when I had over 30 or whatever, let's think about like either your project managers or your CSMs. I like to meet these customers in pre-sales, and I'd be like, oh, these people need somebody that's like super friendly. That's this person on my team. But these people need somebody that's almost like a PMP level project manager, because push it through, all business, boom, boom. Like I have one of those on my team as well too. Like, oh, these people, I'm just sorry. I'm thinking of one client, which I cannot announce here. They're looking for somebody like cool and hip. Like we've got a young, cool and hip person on my team as well too, versus like, oh, let's have all 35-year-old white guys, right? Like it's like nobody. That's a terrible. You're not able to relate to your customers as well. It's not a good look. So I also don't like over-indexing in the other way as well too. It should definitely be a good blend of people regardless. Like you shouldn't be like, okay, we're going to be 100% female.
No, that wouldn't be good either. Like you really need multiple types of diversity. I'm based in EMEA here, and I also want diversity in different languages that are spoken, just different nationalities, because we have customers all around Europe, and you want to connect them with somebody that they could feel more related to. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. I just noticed the time, and we're going long, and I always promise these are gonna be like for your dog walk, 25 minutes and things like that.
Now you need to walk longer.
Exactly. Get those steps in. Summer's coming, right? So this is a lot that you're doing. I usually ask like, hey, what's the fun thing that you're doing this summer that's coming up that's not CS related? You doing any trips?
What's the fun thing? Oh yeah, I'm doing trips. Like now every year we're taking the kids and we are going to road trip all the way to Croatia.
Oh my God.
By car. Amazing. So when you think about it, it could be done in 2 days or 3, but we are there the whole summer. We work from there part of the time.
My neighbors do the same thing. They go over to Croatia for the summer.
Yeah, Croatia is awesome. So no, you just managed to see so much across Europe, and kids are having a blast. Last year, we stopped firstly in Paris to see Eiffel Tower.
Nice.
They were just so in awe. And then, just when you think about the half of the Europe, what amazing things you can see, and the Alps, it's just awesome. So that's on the menu for the summer.
Oh, I'm so jealous. We tried to plan a trip to go to Italy because I'm half Italian and my daughters and everything, and it just didn't work out. We initially had that trip planned for 2020, which obviously didn't happen, everything like that. So I will get over there again sometime soon, but that sounds amazing. Well, listen, you've been an amazing guest, and I'm really glad we dove into some of these topics because I can guarantee they have not been talked about on the podcast before. So we'll grab all your links and put them in so people can start hearing your podcast as well. And thanks for taking some time. Just hold on one second here and we'll sign off. But thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Jeff.